Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, your Swansea City podcast. I'm Matt Barocco and I'm joined as ever by Steve Carroll. Afternoon, Steve.
Afternoon.
Well, plenty to get on with this one. It's been a couple of weeks since our last pod, but we promised we'd get you one before the start of the season, and that is this. So, lots of news to go through, as expected, after the long drawn-out saga with Russell Martin. Is he going to go to Southampton? Then when we get Michael Duff in, things started to move, and they've continued to move, Steve, and players are still coming in and going out as we speak. We're still waiting for confirmation on other signings as well, so this, by the time you listen to it, is already going to be out of date, I'm sure, but we'll do our best to bring as accurate a picture of this on a Wednesday afternoon. That's what we can do, really, isn't it? So let's get a rundown on what's happened since our last pod, where we specifically talked about players that may or may not fit in Michael Duff's system. One of those we mentioned was Morgan Whittaker, and no doubt as soon as you listen to that, the news had already come out that he'd left the club. So already out of date there, Steve.
Yeah, I think that's typical. When you record these things, you can never get it perfect, and obviously when you haven't got anyone massively on the inside of the club, you don't know whether to hold off or anything like that. But yeah, Whittaker has gone. Not a big shock, I think, for both of us. We discussed it, as you said, didn't we, on the last one, that he might go. And obviously, I think it's probably a good move for everybody, for being honest. I mean, Whittaker probably wanted to go to Plymouth. He did really well there, so they'll be really pleased to get him back. And we haven't got a bad fee and hopefully a sell on in there as well for a player that we probably didn't want and one that didn't really want to be here. So yeah, I think it made sense to do that deal, and we can move on now, can't we?
Yeah, I think what you just said there really about the sell-on is the big thing for me, because I think he's clearly got something, and in the right system that plays to his strengths, he's shown that he can excel. Might not have ever been in a Swansea City shirt. It didn't really look like it was going to happen for him here. But if he does well at Plymouth, hopefully we have got a nice little sell-on there. So, because I'm convinced that in the right system, he'll be worth a lot more than what we sold him for in a couple of years' time. So, I mean, it could benefit the club a little bit down the line. Is incoming, Steve, and not just outgoings. There's a couple of big signings which we've been toying over for quite some time now. 2 loan signings. One's happened, one's waiting to happen. Rushworth from Brighton has joined. He is surely going to be the number one goalkeeper, Carl Rushworth. He's come into the club in the last couple of days now, and we've heard big things, big expectations and big hopes on this guy.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, it goes without saying that we really, really needed to sign a goalkeeper. So I'm delighted that we have, and he needs to go straight into the team, doesn't he? I think my feelings on Andy Fisher are quite clear. I don't really need to go over them again. So yeah, we need Rushworth should go straight into the team. I think obviously he did well at Lincoln last year, so the natural progression is for him to go a division higher. And yeah, I'm quite optimistic about him. He'll be working, with Martin Margetson, who's, a top coach, as we've said before. So yeah, I'm optimistic that it'll be a good signing for us. So yeah, but look, is it an upgrade on the goalkeeper that was going to play Saturday? Otherwise, I would be amazed if it isn't. So it's got to be good news.
Yeah, and I think we were hoping to have Stu James on this podcast. He couldn't make it today, but we were hoping to get him next week now. He did an interview with Martin Margetson not so long ago, Steve, didn't he? And he spoke about this obsession of looking for goalkeepers that are fantastic with their feet and playing out from the back and using it as a sweeper keeper. And I think in the article, Stuart James noted that Margetson rolled his eyes at that point and said that he'd rather his goalkeepers just make sure they can save the shots first and foremost, clean the crosses, to command the area, and the basics, really. So this is why I think he does go in straight into the team, because I don't think Margetson is going to be as closely trying to fit the goalkeeper into the tactical side of the team as perhaps Dean Thornton and Russell Martin were. They were almost playing as an outfield player at times, so you wanted your keeper to be able to be part of that build-up play from the back. I think Margetson wants his goalkeeper to be keeping clean sheets, and that's where he starts and ends, and that, to be honest, will be a welcome change.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's fairly obvious with a goalkeeper that they've got to be a good shot stopper first and foremost. I mean, if you're not, then I don't see how on earth you can, have a career in the game. So surely that has to take preference over everything else, including this. Look, I don't mind a goalkeeper that can pass. I mean, it's not a bad thing at all, but I mean, it should never be that is the priority. They're there to keep the ball out of the net, aren't they? I mean, we've spoken many times, we want to see this nice football and everything like that, but I mean, there is such a thing as over the top, and I think when it comes to goalkeepers, you can't be prioritising one who's good with his feet over one that can, make the type of saves you want and hopefully can command an area. So, I think we've gone for a goalkeeper maybe with different priorities, and look, we had to do that. I think it's quite straightforward, isn't it? I mean, how many times did we gift horrendous goals last year, and it was the goalkeeper's fault? I mean, I'm not just talking about Fisher. Obviously, he is by far the worst goalkeeper.
But we did both also prefer Stephen Bender for those reasons, because he was more commanding of his area, because he was a better shot stopper. No, he wasn't as good as, with his feet, or perhaps not quite as good as distribution. I think the distribution thing is a bit of a myth anyway, but not quite good at those characteristics. But we both preferred Bender because we thought he's winning us points here because he's saving one-on-ones and stuff. And
he was so open sometimes. I think I went to Coventry, it was one example, where Grimes was giving the ball away in the opposition's half. Within about 2 passes, they're in on goal with us. It's like a one-on-one, but Bender's dug us out of a hole.
Yeah.
Whereas you'd be looking at Fisher and thinking, 50-50, I'm not convinced he's going to save it. And, you're getting caught then. In all fairness, it's more the team's fault than the goalkeeper's there.
Oh, yeah.
But you do need your goalkeeper to dig you out of trouble on occasions. And it just feels as if, the Fisher hasn't really done that. So hopefully Rushworth now will do that. And, look, I mean, if you haven't got a good goalkeeper, you're never going to be particularly successful.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue a full season of Fisher would really cost you a lot of points based on what we saw last season. So, hopefully now we're not going to have that issue, and Rushworth will start on the weekend, do well, and he's the number one.
So averting this from being like a Fisher a slamming session, because we've done plenty of that, but in terms of how we see it, Rushworth's going to be a lot more imposing from what other fans have said when he played on loan at Lincoln last year, and they said he was fantastic. He was and people who watch League One football have said he's one of the brightest prospects outside the Premier League. So we got a high hopes for him, and fingers crossed, because as you say, every successful team starts with a strong goalkeeper. With Stephen Bender out until what we expect to be around Christmas time, recovering from his injuries occurred at the start of the year. It's interesting to read that he potentially might be on his way out the door with Fulham potential suitors, which is interesting. He's out of contract next summer, but Rushworth only being on loan, I'd be a bit disappointed there, because I still see Stephen Bender as a long-term number one goalkeeper for the Swans.
Yeah, it's a tough one, that, isn't it? But the issue is he's only got a year left, I think, isn't he? So we're in a bit of a predicament here, aren't we? And I really think that we've got to learn these lessons. I mean, Russell Martin banged the drum about it a lot last season, but I don't think he was wrong. I mean, we don't really want the players that we know we want to keep for the longer term. We don't want those guys to go into a last year of a contract. We need to try and maybe deal with that a little bit quicker. I think obviously Jay Fulton is somebody we dealt with that with, didn't we, late last season. So that situation was avoided. But there's a lot of players still now in the similar position of Bender. I mean, I would argue a lot of them I would leave as they are for now, because they've got a lot to prove if they want an extension here. But I think Bender is somebody that I would have preferred to have, tied down for longer. But look, we're in a predicament now where if there's a year left, he's injured. It's very unlikely he's going to get sold in August, I would have thought, because of his injury. And then obviously it goes into January, and if he knows his interest from a Premier League club, for example, we're in a bit of trouble, aren't we? So
are we? I mean, because he's looking at Fulham thinking he's never going to get game time there, is he, realistically? But here he's looking at a lone goalkeeper and thinking, well, he's going in the summer. I mean, for me, I may be looking too simplistically, but I'm looking at where is he going to get game time? Goalkeepers look, when we signed Fabianski from Arsenal, we made him essentially because he wasn't playing.
But you've got to remember, Fabianski was there for 7 years and barely played. Now, we've got a lot of goalkeepers like this. Yeah. Like Bender might think, though, well, maybe I will get in the team, and he may well have double his wages. That's always what you're up against. I look at Wayne Hennessy, right, at Nottingham Forest, and before that he was at Burnley, wasn't he? And I'm looking at him and thinking, you've been the Wales number one, you don't have long left. If you want to remain the Wales number one, you've got to go somewhere where you know you're going to play, even if it means you're going to drop down. Hasn't happened. A lot of goalkeepers seem to be, happy to sit on the bench. Bender might not be like that.
At his age, though, because, as you say, Hennessy's at the other end of his career where he's probably just thinking a bit more money, happy days.
He is, but he still has been playing for the national team, or he was, so it's hurted him in that sense then, isn't it? So But I mean, what I would say with Bender is he did go out on loan, didn't he, to Peterborough in Martin's first season after Christmas.
Yeah.
So maybe he is a goalkeeper that does want to play. But look, the problem is, as we know in these situations, money talks, doesn't it? If he gets offered the double his wage, he can go to London, always more appealing. He can probably get a flight from London back to where he's from in Germany, very easily. It probably takes an hour, doesn't it? Whereas he's got 3 hours by road to get to London from here. You're always up against it with those type of things as well. That's what you have to bear in mind. So, look, we'll have to see how it plays out, won't we? But I think when you do get interest from a top flight club, it's never great, is it? It's you always know what could happen.
We were going to talk at the end. We are going to talk at the end about the cup game as well. We've got coming up after Birmingham, which is Northampton at home a few days later. And we're going to talk about youngsters that may get a shot in there. One of the ones we would have definitely put as a shoe in to get some game time in that one is Josh Thomas. Today he's gone on loan to Port Vale for the season. In my opinion, that's probably the best solution. I mean, he potentially gets 30 plus games in that league, or is certainly competing for a starting spot in that team, and can really make a name for himself. And if he impresses at that level, then really gets himself a shot at breaking into the first team next year.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm a big fan of players, like young players going out on loan. I think it can make a massive difference. I think of some of the ones over the last few years. I remember McBurney going to Barnsley when we were struggling in the Premier League, but he did really well. They got Player of the Year. Then when we were relegated, my first thought was, right, McBurney now needs to be our first choice striker. And it proved to be the case. And obviously then we sold him for a lot of money. I mean, you look at Ollie Cooper went to Newport far more recently, wasn't it? And then last year he came back and he established himself as a first team player, didn't he? So, look, I think when you're a youngster, you really need game time. I mean, I look at Liam Cullen and I think he really would have benefited from longer loan spells previously, but, it didn't happen for whatever reason. And I think it sort of held up his development a bit. I mean, I think there's just no substitute there for playing what I would describe as man's football. I mean, you can play under 21s as much as you want, but I mean, there's not as much on it. It can't be as physical. And you just think it's such a good grounding for someone. I mean, Josh, I think he's from the area, isn't he? So he's going to move away for the first time. So that's going to be a change for him. And it's just all about adapting then to, the new surroundings and the fact that he is playing man's football, and it's going to be a bigger challenge. But this is what separates the boys and the men, isn't it? So, but good luck to him. I really hope he does well, because look, we always want young players from this area in the team, I would say. And look, if it goes well, then you'd have thought next season he's in contention, isn't he?
Yeah, you'd think so. There's certainly a developmental path there for him, isn't there? So fingers crossed he has a great season there and comes back ready to break into the team. First we'll mention the one that has happened, Steve. Mikola Koharevich comes from Troyes. You're impressed they managed to get that right first time. We love an undisclosed fee, but we're going to get a couple of mil, maybe somewhere on that figure. He comes into the team last season, impressed at Hibs on loan. I think it was 5 goals in 10 starts there. They seem to really love him, which is probably more of a tell than when you look at his goal to game ratio. I think how fans adapt to someone. I mean, you look at some players that who was that West Brom guy we were linked with deadline day last season? Carlin Grant. Yeah, he's going to Cardiff now, isn't he? But of course, he had a good goal to game ratio. But West Brom fans absolutely despised him, and that really put a bit of a sickener in the back of my throat, where I was thinking, he's obviously, this is a bit of a fallacy. He's probably just not going to perform for the team.
Well, I'd liken it to someone like Boy or Baston, where I know at the start of that season, so the second season in the Championship, he was scoring a few goals, but I just thought he was anonymous most of the time.
Yeah,
I think you were on the same page as me, thinking, this guy, the record isn't bad, but other than scoring, he really doesn't offer a lot at all.
No.
And it's obvious that Steve Cooper felt the same, because he booted him out, didn't he? And he tried to get other people in on loan and stuff like that, so he clearly wasn't fussed in him either. So I suppose the Grant thing, as you say, it could be the goal sort of masks the deficiencies. But I say, at Hibs, he's highly rated, isn't he? Koharevich. It's just the one issue I think we might have is his fitness seems to be a problem, doesn't it? So I suppose that is an issue.
But he is young, and there is definitely scope there. If he can get the right training program and stay fit, then there's not only clearly from I know YouTube is an absolute minefield for highlight reels, but what looks like quite a bit of a player in there, was an absolute unit, by the way, as well. But also, long term for the club. There's money to be made in young players, isn't there?
Yeah, there is. I mean, I'd always say that if you're going to spend money on players, I mean, preferably you want them to be under 25. And I think Yates is 26, so it's not a massive difference there. But I mean, we made big mistakes, didn't we, in the latter years of the Premier League, where we bought players in who were about 30, around that, and it was like a last big contract. And then when you get relegated, you can't shift these people. So I think we made big mistakes there. So it's vital, really, it shows you shouldn't really go down that route. I mean, I think it's a case of the odd one-off isn't so bad. But I think now we're not in the Premier League, you can't really afford to do that. So, I think, it potentially there could be some resale value in there, which obviously for a club like us, it has to be a good thing, doesn't it? So, but we'll see. The good thing is now we seem to have more options in positions, don't we? I mean, you look at it, we were hugely reliant on Perot last year. I mean, I know we had Obafemi for a bit, but then obviously that went sour. Cullen sort of stepped in, and to be fair to him, it did make a difference. So that was great. But you always look at that second half of the season and think, if Perot had got injured, my God, we were in trouble. Because there just wasn't anybody else. And I mean, there were times last year when Perot, in my view, and I think you probably share this one, he really wasn't great, and he did look a little bit half-assed. So now I know he still might go, but I think we're in a position now, really, where he does stay, but he's not pulling his weight. He can justifiably now be dropped, and you could argue there's players there now that could take his place and do a job for us. So I think that's the main thing. And I think every team needs competition for places. I'd always say that. The worst thing that can happen is everyone knows they're going to play every week. I mean, I'd look at, do you remember England under Sven-Goran Eriksson? They had the most nailed-on team ever. And if you're not in that 11, it must have been so dispiriting. And you think, well, I'm never going to get picked, am I? There's always got to be that thing of, I've got to perform because the guy behind me is pushing me. So I think, we might have that now in a few positions. We're still lacking, as I'm sure we'll come on to. But, up front now, it does feel as if, two strikers have come in. Perot is still here as things stand. And Cullen is here, obviously. So we have options. And that's really good because, last year it felt like in a lot of positions there were no options. And it was hugely frustrating, wasn't it?
We're playing catch-up. Obviously, due to several disastrous windows whereby we just did not sign the players we needed to sign in the positions we needed to sign them. We got a couple of loans in last season to fill the blanks at full-back, and we didn't use them. They just kept coming in, not getting game time and leaving, which was as frustrating as ever to see that happen. But it's been a long time, and I said this the other day, since I've actually had that kind of sense of, wow, Swansea City threaten to look like they're getting their shit together. We are playing catch-up in what looks like is going to be the most fiercely competitive championship that we've been part of in my lifetime, because everywhere you look in this division, people are making moves. Teams are making big signings. You could name 4 or 5 clubs that are making great signings across the board, and you're thinking, wow, I think we're doing good business, but everyone seems to be doing really proactive business this year. So sometimes you need to move forward just to stay where you are.
Yeah, it's a case of if you just stand still, it means you go backwards, doesn't it? I mean, we'll come on to talk about who we're playing on Saturday, but they've made a lot of signings, for example, which we'll discuss. But and I'm looking up the road at a club who are meant to be embargoed, and they seem to be bringing players in. Yeah, and it just feels like you say, people are improving, and you wonder if you're not improving, you could really be left behind you.
It could be a struggle.
Yeah, it could be, and I'm not sure if there's any that are. I mean,
look at Sheffield Wednesday, for example. They've had a disastrous summer window.
They've had a very strange window, haven't they, for example?
They've lost their manager as well, which is another big...
Yeah, and I look at maybe someone like Rotherham, they lost Ben on a free. Yeah. They've stayed up, which, the first time they've managed to do that for a little while. But I mean, someone like that is going to find it really tough. I don't know if they've brought many in, for example. And, so I think the teams really that haven't tried to strengthen, they're going to find it quite difficult, aren't they? So
there may be 2 leagues this year, potentially, whereby you've got those that went all out and bought in 5, 6, 7 players, which we're part of that group. But we think, wow, we're going to really kick on this year. Well, wow, so many teams have done exactly the same thing. Are there other teams that just not done that?
It could be a 3-tier thing, to be honest with you, because I mean, those teams on parachutes.
Oh yeah,
they're on such a significant advantage, aren't they? So, and you look at someone like Leicester, and the 3 strikers are still there of Vardy, Daka, and Iheanacho. I mean, that's just goals galore, isn't it?
I think I saw, and I'm not going to be able to get the exact figures, somewhere around 70 million a year in wages. Not like Leicester are paying. We're paying just under or just around 9 million.
Yeah.
And there's what you're fighting against, 7 times the wage budget.
Exactly. Leicester they've sold Madison and Barnes, and a lot of players were out of contract, so they've gone off the wage bill. But I wouldn't have thought Leicester now have to do that much more at this stage. No. They're probably okay as long as they go straight back up. But I mean, you look at the players they've got; they've surely got a great chance, haven't they? So, but that's what we're up against. I mean, I think if you come down, you're on about 60 million a year, are you? In TV money, something like that. So I mean, our income is about 17 million.
But does it not? I think it depreciates, doesn't it, year on year? But I mean, yes, the first year you get the big whack.
The fact is, Southampton, Leeds, and Leicester are on about 60. Oh, yeah. Watford and I don't know. There must be somebody else. I think Norwich, is it? They must be on. I think those two. I think it drops to about 45, maybe something like that. So it's a reasonable drop. But I mean, it's still you're talking over twice what we're on. So, look, those two in particular will be thinking, and a lot last year was poor, we didn't make the top 6. Yes. This time they have to.
Yeah, and I was about to say there are clubs last season who expected to do a lot better than they did, who will now look to rectify that. So, there is going to be 6 or 7 teams in this league who are definitely targeting the top 6 and will be fighting tooth and nail to get there. There'll be the others, like us, like the likes of...
There could be a lot that are targeted.
If you look at the likes of Sunderland and Coventry, who just missed out last year.
Well, that's it, Middlesbrough as well. I mean, if you look since Carrick went in there, they did really, really well, didn't they? So
those teams are we going to be competing with, possibly to target 5th and 6th, that kind of area of the playoffs where you just go, well, you can sneak in there with a bit of momentum and good form. But we'll come on to our season expectations. That was a little bit of a detour there into that. But... we were talking about the one that did happen, Kuharevich. The one that I've just literally checked Twitter again now because I'm expecting this to happen the moment we stop recording. Harrison Ashby from Newcastle. This has dragged on quite a while as well. Will he? Won't he? Looked like it was nailed on. Then Eddie Howe said it's not close to happening. Then an eagle-eyed Swans fan has pulled a still out of the training video. Or I think it's Abdullah in the foreground, but in the side of the shot is an arm, which looks a lot. I mean, these are eagle-eyed Swans fans here who have gone and compared that to the squad photo of Harrison Ashby in Newcastle, and he's got exactly the same tattoo. So we have to assume he's there, he's training with the club, and they're just holding this off just to make yet another Jackcast podcast completely out of date before it goes out on air. Yeah. But no, we're hoping that'll happen. I think it's safe to announce that, or at least say that that's going to happen in the coming day or so, probably before you've even heard it. So we wait with bated breath for that one and hope it all goes smoothly. I think that's it at the moment for who's come and gone. I might have missed the odd player here. I don't think I have. I mean, we talked about Key and Janelli in the last podcast.
And Yates,
of course. One probably big news is the development or lack of development on the future of Joel Pirou, who we were expecting to be ushering out the door or kind of courting offers and stuff like that. Mind games maybe, but at the moment we've issued he's going to just stay here. We're not getting anywhere near the sort of offers which we'd consider entertaining for the bloke. He's got a year left. We're building a team here. We already heard, about March, April time, Steve, about the new investors coming into the club, and their target was purely, we want to get this club. The only way they're going to make money or get this club generating money is if we go back to the top flight, and they had one goal in mind. And if they're going to be building a team to do that, and they're not getting the sort of money that they can reinvest sensibly from Joel Pirou, then the message is, for now, he stays a Swan.
Yeah, it seems to be, doesn't it? Whether that will stay that way, I don't know. I mean, it's a tricky one, isn't it? I think I definitely wouldn't want to lose Pirou on a free, but I mean, you have to weigh up the balance, don't you, in terms of, is it worth selling for a certain price if you think he can make the difference for you? It's, there's probably a tipping point, isn't it? It's a tough one. I mean, I was convinced he would have gone. I thought he was going to go last year, to be honest, and it hasn't happened. So it's a tricky one. I think realistically, if we get a good offer, he needs to go.
What's a good offer? Because I'm thinking, the number I'm thinking in my head might be different to yours, but I'm thinking it's got to be 11 or 12 million before we start talking to clubs.
Yeah, I would say maybe, I suppose if we got 10, I think that might, maybe that would be it. I mean, you'd want more, wouldn't you? I mean, it feels annoying that Gyökeres has gone for 20 or something, and if you think we haven't managed to get a bid anywhere near that for Peru. So, but yeah, look, it's got to be 10 million, I think, realistically, for us to accept. But I suppose you do always have the option in January. I mean, if we were safe in mid-table doing nothing, in theory, you could sell him then, couldn't you? I know you wouldn't get that type of money from then either, but it'd be a case of we're not going up, we're not going down. Do you just take 5 or 6 million? If that makes sense. That could then happen. I mean, you look at Cardiff with Kiefer Moore. I think they could have sold him to Wolves on deadline day a few years back for 7, and in the end that didn't happen, and they sold him for 3.5. Then they obviously just thought, right, well, we'll just take the money, and we're in the middle. We're not really going to do a lot, so we'll just bank the money because that seems the sensible option. So it's a tricky one, isn't it? But as things stand, I mean, I'm assuming he'll still be here the weekend, and he'll probably be in the team. So yeah, that's where we're at really. But it is a little bit surprising. But look, I think it's a good thing that we're not doing what we were before, are we? Where it's almost a case of any offer that comes in, take it, and that's it.
Well, I'm wondering if that is somewhat playing a part rather in what we've seen so far in this window. In that clubs aren't coming in and offering good money for him, because the reputation of Swansea City at the moment is Jason Levian will take whatever he can get for any player. It doesn't matter. He doesn't understand value. He doesn't understand the market and of the British game and stuff, and how much he's worth in Europe. And so looking at that, is there potentially the hangover from windows gone by, where we've got more of a bullish background now, it seems, with Paul Watson, been there, done that, knows the market, knows what he's worth, and said, no, excuse the French, but fuck off. I'm not going to sell for that sort of price.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, the issue comes where if you develop a reputation for being a soft touch on deadline day, it's probably a reputation that's not very easy to shift, especially if that person is still involved. So you can imagine where clubs have gone, well, why do we really want to push this? Because, we've seen what's happened in the past, and, they've folded on deadline day and accepted a lot less money. So, they've, a few clubs maybe chancing their arm. And, that then is like the price you pay for, your bad business, if you like, previously. So I think sometimes it is worth just digging your heels in a bit and just showing, look, we're not like that anymore. This is how things are now. And you do have to pay a certain amount.
What a statement that would be. I should say, Watson wouldn't be the one making that call, but of course he'd be in the voice there, who knows football, knows the sport. And when you're looking at the likes of Morris and Coleman, who are coming in from the bit of the outside on the cold, have the money and are wanting the best for the Swans, then they will lend an ear from someone like Paul Watson then to say, well, actually, no, this isn't a reasonable offer. You won't have the final say, but he will certainly be someone whose expertise they'll be relying on, because we've seen so many times there's been a struggle to find someone at the club in the last few years who aren't actually making the decisions, who understands the football market, and that's been a big problem, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. I mean, look, let's be honest, Hugh Jenkins got sacked, didn't he, because he understood that the Dan James deal was one of the worst in history. He paid a heavy price for that, even though realistically they should have been on the phone to him saying, 6 months later, thank you for turning that down, because we have now made significantly more money. But, I think, look, Levy, and it goes without saying, the man is clueless. He doesn't know what he's doing, but he thinks that he does, which makes it even worse. The man just needs to butt out of everything and let people that know what they're talking about deal with it. So, that's the simple thing with it, really, isn't it? And, hopefully now we've got people making the decisions that, have got a far better idea of, what people are worth and what's the best way to go about business, because it's always felt as if, as well, we seem to like doing business on deadline day, and in my view you should never want that.
No, absolutely not. That's a sign of a club who hasn't got their shit in order, for afraid of it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know Daniel Levy's probably the biggest example. I mean, he seems to love it, but I mean, quite often I think that approach hasn't really worked so much in recent years, if you know what I mean. No. Trying to con people and stuff like that and just get that marginally better deal. I mean, I'll always say the best thing to do is just to try and get people in as early as possible, preferably by the beginning of pre-season. I always hark back to it. Martinez, the year we won League One, nearly everybody was through the door by the start of pre-season. The only issue, of course, was the curveball of Lee Trundle got sold to Bristol City, which we weren't expecting. So then obviously we had to change, and I think Warren Feeney came in on loan in the end, and that was the replacement. But look, the earlier you get people in, the better they can gel. It gives everyone a chance to settle in, and it's just generally better, isn't it? I mean, rather than getting to the wire, if people know you've got money or they know you're desperate, then prices go up, and the people that you want quite often have already moved. That's why it's a good thing with Ginnerly and Key, for example, where we've brought in 2 players out of the contract, isn't it? You know what I mean? 2 players who would have been wanted elsewhere, rather than waiting for the dregs at the end of the window, and then you're up against it, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely, and hopefully a quiet, boring deadline day for the Swans won't actually be nightmare, which it normally is. It's normally a nightmare because we need to do so much business that we don't do. It ends up being chaotic and desperate and depressing, really. But this year, with fingers crossed that we're slowly building it with a month left of that window to really try and get the squad full enough to compete for 46 games plus the cup games, really. And that's something we've got to, as I said earlier, play catch-up on from the disastrous windows that went by. Just to touch on now, we're just talking about players who are coming into the club. Perot may or may not still be here, depending on how bullish the Swansea owners decide to be. Matt Grimes, another big name who's looked potentially like he might follow Russell Martin out the door to Southampton. Then perhaps not, and they were looking to other names and stuff like that, and they've spent quite a bit of money already, Southampton, on trying to build a team for a Premier League push. Could be back on the cards, we don't know, but his interview he gave to BBC yesterday was felt a little bit like a come and get me plea, which wasn't really what I guess Swans fans want to hear, but he spoke very highly of Russell Martin and spoke how massive Southampton are, etc., etc. Maybe am I being paranoid? Did that feel a little bit not so much kind of I want to stay here?
Yeah, I was thinking the same, to be honest. Like I say, I mean, he's talked up Martin. We knew they had a close relationship, obviously, and obviously describing Southampton as a massive club and all this type of thing. Yeah, it didn't sound great today. I suppose the only way we can sort of look at it as well is he may have said plenty else in that interview, and it's not been published. So there's always these things, and it could have been slightly, played up to be a bit over the top. He may well have praised Michael Duff and said he's looking forward to working with him and stuff like that, but they've not gone with those comments. So that will always be the other issue, isn't it? It's unless you were there, it's hard to be 100% certain on these things. But
very true.
Yeah, look, it's hard to tell, but it didn't sound massively encouraging, did it? And you look at Southampton at the moment. Obviously, they haven't really sold many, have they? They seem to be putting huge price tags on players, which I think is a little bit over the top. So. But you can see Lavia go into Liverpool, can't you? I mean, that looks likely. Ward-Prowse maybe going somewhere. I mean, if those two go, they're going to need reinforcements. Judging by the previous manager's relationship with Grimes, it wouldn't be a big shock if he came in for him, would it? And then, you're in a predicament then where, if he wants to go, it's difficult to keep him. And obviously he's got 2 years left on the contract, which is a good thing. So...
Well, that would have to be a premium. I mean, we talk about Perot, where they'd be bullish enough with a year left, but you get your captain taking what might well be, at this point, late on in the window. With your former manager, you've already had a bit of a thing with his new club about his compensation.
I'd definitely be thinking in that situation.
It's going to be 8 figures for me.
We'd have to fleece this lot and be thinking, right, well, they've already pissed us off once this summer.
Yeah.
But...
it's just what you could get for a midfielder that doesn't actually, his stats don't. If you were looking right on deadline day as a chairman, thinking we're light in this area, let's have a look at what's out there, and you if you were lazy and you'd look at what's he provide, what's his assists, what's his goals and stuff like that. Is he going to pop up in the box and stuff? Is he going to do X, Y, and Z? Grimes doesn't really do those sorts of things. It's a bit similar in that regard to Leon Britton, where he doesn't actually look stats-wise unless you look down into passing stats and possession and stuff like that, if you're looking at that level. But you can't really pick up Grimes as a late addition. You kind of build a team around him, don't you? Similar with Leon. He's not gonna slot into that team, and kind of you need to get the players
around the right team.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. So it's interesting to see where with that. if he goes anywhere, he goes to Southampton because he's got the man there who knows exactly how to make him tick. So we'll see what happens with that one. One thing he did say in the interview, and one thing that was encouraging, was the final pre-season game at Reading, Steve. A nice win, and also some nice passages of play, seeing what a Michael Duff team will look like, hopefully, as the season progresses. Complete chalk and cheese from the pre-season games just leading up to it, and actually some very promising stuff.
Yeah, it did look a lot better. I mean, I was at the Bristol Rovers game, and it was quite inspiring, to be honest with you. But, I mean, you try not to get too high or too low in pre-season, I think, to do, because obviously...
some do.
Well, yeah, I know.
Swans Twitter's been a cesspit.
Well, look, it's the same every year. People, lose their minds. Look, it's a little bit different. If you go to somewhere like Newport and lose 5-0, then it might be a bit like, look, we've taken a pace here off a team 2 leagues lower. What's going on?
Yeah.
Whereas, I think if you're playing teams in similar divisions to you, and the result isn't really what matters. It's just the manager trying to find out about his players and fitness and people not getting injured and stuff like that. Really, but look, you're always looking for things, aren't you? Because it's just human nature. But yeah, there were some nice goals in there. So yeah, I think positive. And look, the main thing is now it's all about Saturday, isn't it? That's the truth. It's the first game. We hope now the manager knows who he wants to pick, and the formation that he wants to play and how he's going to set us out. So, hopefully the pre-season games have been good for that, and yeah, he knows what he wants, which he probably does because he's quite a straight talking guy, isn't he?
He appears to be, yeah.
And so yeah, it's just a case now of seeing what he decides to go with on the weekend, isn't it?
Well, it was quite encouraging, apart from the football on display and obviously the score line. But it was quite encouraging to see that we'd been led up a merry path over the fitness of Joe Allen and Josh Ginnelly as well, as they both came on and played a part. And nice to see that where we were thinking, when are they going to feature? They haven't really had a pre-season, so where are they going to fit in now? We're going to be looking at October time before they get bedded into. Nice to see them get in some minutes on the pitch now. I suspect whether they're on the pitch on Saturday or on the bench as backup, they are very much in that picture.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because I was thinking in the Bristol Rovers game in particular, I know a couple of players hadn't come in at that point either, but that bench looked very weak, which was concerning. So, the fact that a couple of players have come in, obviously we're expecting another one, but obviously 2 players back from injury, it doesn't half look better. It's 5 players that we didn't have, isn't it, for the Bristol Rovers game. So, yeah, I mean, I think I look at Allen and Ginnelly and just think, well, they'll be on the bench the weekend. I mean, they might get a few minutes, but can they play at least a half against Northampton in the League Cup, for example? I mean, that would be a realistic target. I mean, 45 to 60 minutes and see how it goes. And then, obviously then we'll try and build them up. And then it's up for the manager to decide if he thinks that they're worthy of a start, really, isn't it? But look, it would just be good to have these more players available. And yeah, I think it certainly looks better than it did, didn't it? Because the impression we had, I think, was that we were looking at towards the end of this month, whereas now, obviously, they've played a game at the end of July, haven't they? So yeah, it's got to be good news, isn't it?
It has got to be good news, and one of the things that we talked about is depth. We talked about that many podcasts and how we can just about put together a starting 11, and beyond that, we're struggling. So it's nice to see now we're actually filling up positions where we go, well, yeah, we do need another player there. We do. We talk about Harrison Ashby potentially joining later today or tomorrow, and Josh Key already signed for that side. Maybe he goes over to the other side, which he has done a couple of times in pre-season, and fills the void at left wing back. But again, we've had Abdullah play there in pre-season and impressed in that position as well. So it is interesting to see how this team is going to fit together, but it's so important that we don't just have that threadbare starting 11, because as you said, last season we were 1 Perot injury away from tumbling down the league, and 3 and 23 might have gone even worse, in terms of where we could have gone with that form. But when we are talking about how we're doing business, Steve, how impressed have you been the way we've quietly chugged along? Not a lot of names have got out there. These 2 loan signings aside, but a lot of names come really last minute to the fore when they're already happening, and Michael Duff is very clever not to mention them. He says, we've got boys in for medicals, I'm not going to give you names, not going to give you whatever, we'll see what happens after the medicals and stuff. So everything's been kept under wraps. It's not really something that we're used to. There's always tidbits and news leaking out here that seem to have really closed that down this summer.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, realistically, it's a good thing. Like, I think it's always nice to know things, isn't it? But, there's something.
But if we know them, everyone knows.
Yeah,
them.
I think sometimes it's good just for it to be, just revealed at the last minute, isn't it? I mean, I always remember in the early days of Hugh Jenkins being chairman.
Oh, he was the worst for
he's the worst for bloody blabbing. I mean, I think Jason Brown, wasn't it, the goalkeeper, said he was coming in, and then that alerted Blackburn they come in, and he's gone there then. So, I think it's a case of, look, as much as it's good to know these things, there really is no need. Just tell us when it's done. And it's simple. Basically, get things done, though. Yeah. That's fine.
It's very, I much prefer this way. Even though I'm left in the dark, and you do get people then who lose their shit over social media saying, we're shit, we're not doing anything. Well, and we got evidence already this summer that things are moving quite swiftly in the background. We just have to be patient. Patient, not a word typically associated with Swansea City fans. Looking ahead to the season opener on Saturday, where we welcome Birmingham City to the, I'm still going to call it the Liberty. Steve, we got new players coming in. I think maybe all start. You think maybe not Kuharevich, but everyone else, you'd just slot straight in that starting 11.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I think from my point of view, Rushworth will definitely play. I'm sure that won't surprise anybody. I'm assuming we're going to play like a 3-5-2. So that means, Cabango, Darlin and Wood, I would have thought, as a back three. You could have, if Ashby is signed, then him and Key as the wing backs. Then I would assume it would be Grimes and Fulton with maybe Cham, and then Perot and Yates up front. So that's what I'd expect. I mean, you could see maybe Patterson playing instead of Cham, for example, but I'm not seeing many other decisions there that are going to be particularly difficult for the manager. I mean, look, Abdullahi has played a bit, hasn't he, in pre-season, but whether he's going to start or not, I wouldn't be convinced. But I think obviously, as you said, Janelli and Allen, they're not going to be fit enough to start.
No.
And I would have thought, like I say, Perot and Yates would be up front, and Kukarevich will be on the bench. So, that's how I see it. I'd be surprised if the team isn't at least very similar to that.
I think so. I think this one, but it would be nice to see the likes of Janelli, Allen, Kukarevich.
Have some minutes in it.
Bench as well. It's how you can influence a game, isn't it, later on as well? God knows how long it's going to go on for, maybe 110 minutes or whatever, with the new regulations coming in.
You look at the bench now and you think like Kukarevich is like a physical striker. That's something we don't have. And Janelli, someone that can play out wide that has pace. Again, it's something we really don't have. So it's variation then, isn't it? Yeah. It's like if things are not working, it's like you don't really want like for like, do you? You want someone who can ask different questions of the opposition, and there's two players there, for example, that can do that. So you can change it. You've
not mentioned in this passage Liam Cullen, Ollie Cooper, other players there who can come on and get goals and get assists and change games. I mean, that's important to have, isn't it? So even these players who we would last season would have been integral, both of them were integral into that starting 11 last season. It's a testament to, if we're not talking about them starting on Saturday, how we've potentially moved on or moved forward and strengthened in those areas and in other areas as well.
Yeah, definitely. It's things are generally feeling quite positive. I think probably more positive with what we've done for a long time, isn't it? Really. So that's got to be a good thing because it doesn't have to get annoying coming on you and moaning about the same things all the time and just thinking it really doesn't have to be like this, but it does now feel as if there's been a bit of a change, and all for the better because last year they should be kicking themselves at a missed opportunity.
What a chance!
Yeah, they blew it, and this year looks significantly tougher, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Whereas if they had just backed the manager with a couple of signings, we may have gone into the playoffs, been the form team, and like I said, it feels like we blew it, really, doesn't it? So
imagine we had this window. I know it's completely up, but imagine we had this window 12 months ago. Yeah,
exactly. It's a different ball game then, isn't it? So. I think that's what irritates. But look, it's gone now. There's nothing you can do about it. But if it's meant we've learned the lesson, then good, because we needed to learn it desperately.
Yeah. Well, Luton Town got promoted to the Premier League. That's what sort of level of missed opportunity it was, really. The Birmingham themselves, Steve, widely thought of having possibly the strongest window in the Championship. They've been making a lot of good business this summer as well, and really adds to the point we made earlier on that you have to improve just to tread water in this league at the moment, because everyone seems to be improving, or at least we got those divide, haven't we, between the parachute clubs, the clubs in the middle that have improved vastly, of which I'd include us in that, and the ones that have struggled in both those senses, and potentially looking at a long road ahead. Birmingham, I put them in a similar bracket to us now, with a lot of smart business in the summer.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they needed a strengthen, didn't they? I mean, let's be honest, they didn't impress me at all last year. And I massively feel like we might have a score to settle. Because
just a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to mention the away one first, because we were winning there 2-1 for a start.
Yeah, last week.
And then we did what we did best, and we get switched off from a corner and gifted a thing. But like, I still remember me and you walking out of that ground for that bloody home game. Where I still can't put into words how they've beaten us for that. Because I thought they were shock inside, we were on bad form, and somehow they've scored 4 against us, and it was just an absolute disgrace, wasn't it?
I turned round to you, and I remember saying to you, I think it was 3-2 at the time, and I said to you, there is no way we are seeing this game out.
I know.
Lati had just gone off, we were down to 10, and they just turned up the
may
pressure.
I emphasise with this, it was because we'd gone down to 10, not because he had gone off and been replaced.
Oh no,
because obviously he's not a massive loss, but it's the number thing. But it was the fact that
we just knew that was going to. I didn't think we'd concede twice.
What wound me up that day, right, was that Perot, who I've said for a lot of last season wasn't great. In that spell of a couple of months or whatever, he was poor. But that day, he was by far his best game. He bloody subbed him off. Yeah. And I'm thinking, what are you doing? I couldn't get that with Martin, but then, we gave away 2 shockers at the end. And I think I actually remember you talking to, like, I think there was a man with his son. He looked about 8, and I think you said to him, son, don't worry, it's not, you couldn't go off and do something else on a Saturday.
You've still got a chance.
Yeah, I said, you've got a chance to do something else. Like, us, we're buggered now. We've been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah.
And, you're sort of stuck, innit?
Yeah.
You're not going to stop now, but... Yeah, that was... I think we were in genuine disbelief over that one. I mean, because it just felt so undeserved, didn't it? It was just ridiculous.
I think the backstory of that as well, with the
first game after the window shut.
Yeah, the outpouring from Martin. He was there with his press conference with all his backroom staff. Then you had that Zoom meeting with the trust and the owners.
Yeah.
It was such a clusterfuck. The club was in such a mess at the time. You just thought it was a case of us v them. The crowd was so behind the players. Clearly give their all that day for the shirt, and then to lose in that, man, I haven't felt that sick since pick a playoff final. The only playoff final.
That was genuinely. It's quite interesting this, because I'm doing a piece in the fanzine this season of the top 20 like most gut wrenching defeats.
Yeah,
it's since the Liberty era, so home and away game since then. But that is. I'm not going to give you any order, but I can tell you that Birmingham game is in there.
I felt sick. I did feel sick. I know. Let's not dwell, because we're going to have a positive game.
No, let's if the players are listening to this, because they must have all felt just limited. That's like, right, let's give it to this lot, because they bloody deserve, to lose to us, because they were crap.
We only picked up 1 point from them last season, but I genuinely expecting a great game, because you've got in total potentially around about 12 debutants on the pitch for that game, and everyone's going to be thinking the camera's on them. How will their debut go? How will they fare? Will they be in the managers? Will they remain in the managers' plans? Can they impress the fans, the cameras, everything? So are they going to make their mark early doors? New players always have that extra spring in their step, Steve, don't they? There's going to be plenty on the pitch.
There's points to prove, isn't it? People want to get in the team and keep their place. And I think Birmingham have sold their allocation out as well. So look, there's always great anticipation in there, I think, for an opening day. I think regardless of where you are, what you're expecting, it's always the hope, isn't it, of you could have like a really good season. And after 3 months as well, obviously there'll be faces that you haven't seen, and a lot of people wouldn't have watched the game. I mean, if you went to the Wales games, then they wouldn't have cheered you up either. So I think it's just that anticipation really of what could happen and everything like that, and being with your friends and family again at a game. And look, from our point of view as well, it's quite rare to be at home on the opening day, isn't it? I think since the Liberty opened, I think we were home the first 2 seasons there.
Trying to remember,
but other than that, then I think we played Man United, which was David Moyes' first game in charge.
Yeah.
And then Cooper's first game against Hull. I think other than that, in like 18 or 19 years or whatever, this would only be the 5th time we've been at home on the opening day. It's quite remarkable. We're always away, it seems. So it does make a bit of a change to be at home, and hopefully it'll be a good game and we'll do well.
And after a turbulent summer, let's call it a turbulent summer because it's certainly been that. It does start to feel over the last 2 or 3 weeks that even maybe the most pessimistic of Swans fans are slowly perhaps coming round to the idea of looking forward to the start of the season now. There should be a bit of a buzz about the place.
Yeah, I mean, as I say, there always is, isn't there, for an opening day? I mean, there's things to look forward to. It does feel like the summers are getting shorter every year, mate. I've got to be honest. It's a little bit weird in that sense, but look, I mean, everyone is looking forward to it, and I would say to if you're listening to this and you're umming and ahhing about going down, I mean, opening day is always usually one to remember, isn't it? You get a bigger crowd than normal. Everyone's up for it. So, if you're not doing anything on Saturday, then get yourself down there because, what else are you going to do on a Saturday? As I'd always say.
Well, I mean, let's be honest.
Not watch rugby. That's one point they're going to make. Do not go down that route of a friendly nonsense. And it doesn't start till 5:30. You can still watch it if you really want to do that.
I didn't even set him off there. We just did that himself. But I was going to say, you can only get the August games where you picture it in basking in the summer sun, Steve, where the forecast is rain, which is pretty much what we've expected this summer. It's been shit. And we're just hoping that forecast changes between now and Saturday, because how nice would it be to watch Swansea romp home on the opening day in the glorious sunshine?
It should feel like an unwritten rule that it's a baking hot day on the opening day. And
August and May, those are the ones we've got to get guaranteed, isn't it?
I know, exactly. And, from my point of view, I've got a new fanzine coming and I'm annoyed. Because I'm already thinking, well, the weather's crap.
Going to get soaked.
Yeah, exactly. And they've put the price up to $150, which probably, is one of them where, you've got...
It's a cost of living crisis, mind.
Well, this is how I'm justifying it, right? It's the first rise in 13 years.
Yeah.
And I actually Googled this. Inflation since 2010 is 64%. And I'm putting it up 50% after 13 years.
Yeah.
So I don't feel too bad about it when I put it into context like that.
No.
So, that's my answer.
You've got the printing cost and all that sort of stuff.
Exactly.
Look, it is not got any cheaper, I should imagine.
Yeah, and look, you can't put it to 110 or 120 because I'll have change coming out of my backside. So, look, I was have to go to 150, unfortunately. But look, it is what it is. Let's hope for a good day. And, if anyone does want to come and say hello, I'll be by Rossi's. So...
There'll be sellers around the ground, round by Frankie and Benny's as well.
Yeah, well, I suppose it's costing now, isn't it?
Oh, it's not Frankie and Benny's
Don't
anymore.
forget, exactly.
Yeah. Well, once upon a time. Yeah, like the Swan Con will always be called the Liberty. I think that area will obviously always be called Frankie and Benny's.
Yeah, I think once these things are...
they're set in stone, aren't they? I'm stubborn like that. So after Birmingham, how do you think Birmingham's going to go? I think it's going to be a cracking game. Both teams are going to be bang up for it. As I said, plenty of players making their first start to the new club, but I feel like we'll have that edge, being at home, and hopefully just have enough to see over the line. Plus, I think what's key here with the change in regulations, this game could go on. By the way, bear this in mind for if you're making public transport your way to the stadium and back. They're now counting and stopping the clock behind the scenes, fourth official, for a lot more things that are happening on the pitch, substitution, goal celebrations, goal kicks and whatnot. So this game might actually have 8, 9, 10 minutes added on at the end, just in case you're expecting to be able to get to a certain time. Train or bus, just bear that in mind. But strength in depth, you're going to need it if games are going on to 100 minutes, Steve. You're going to need to have fresh legs available on the bench.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we saw a lot of this at the World Cup, really, didn't we? I think that was where it first started, where you're getting a lot of added minutes. But I've got to be honest, I am for it because especially some of the horrible teams, I mean, they just waste time constantly, and you just think it might just stop people from wasting time because they just think, well, there's no point doing it now. But I think what is interesting about it now is, if you think about it, these games going on longer. I mean, let's say now we've got an away day in London. We've got, for example, we've got Millwall coming up.
Train
I'm thinking more from a point of view is you don't want to gamble on your train so much anymore or anything like that because you could miss it.
Yeah, well, you either missed that or you missed the last half hour of the game. Now it's going to go on for ages.
So you have to. I think now we just have to bear these little things in mind, really. But look, I think it's a good thing, isn't it? Deep down, because time wasting is a big bugbear. And we always feel like, don't we, where seeing a goalkeeper's time wasting,
we get punished.
Yeah, it's like they get booked right at the end, and you're just like, well, cheers, ref. I mean, that's great. That does absolutely nothing now.
Our keeper gets booked after 25 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, God, it will never change, will it? Are you feeling positive about Birmingham?
I think reasonably, but look, it's hard to tell, isn't it? I mean, we'll wait and see when there's a lot of changes going on for both clubs, and we'll see. I just don't want to come out there as pissed off as we both were last season. So, let's hope the players that are still here that played in that game look at it and go, right, this lot, we owe them one. Let's give it to them.
Potentially, if Josh Key, who's really impressed in pre-season with his directness and his ability to take on a man, is playing left back, we could see Josh Key versus Ethan Laird.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's going to be a battle.
Yeah, I mean, you look at Laird. I mean, do you remember last year QPR away? I think he played, didn't he? And then he got subbed off because he got injured, but he was killing us. Yeah. Because he was so quick, and obviously we didn't really have anybody like that. So, yeah, look, that will be an interesting one, wouldn't it? If I'm honest, I probably would have taken him back.
Didn't cost much, did he?
No, exactly. That's what I mean. And we talk about players with resale value and stuff like that. You'd have to say he's one that does have it. So I think was it about 750 grand?
Yeah, it wasn't a lot.
Yeah, I would have paid that for him, to be honest with you. But look, he's gone there, and good luck to him apart from Saturday.
Yeah, terrible luck to him. Moving on from Birmingham, we have got a cup game in the midweek. Then Northampton at home, another home game for us to look forward to. This one I'm going to ask you, Steve, how do you treat this? How important is it to progress, or are you looking for giving the likes of Allen and Giannelli minutes and treating it a little bit more like a pre-season warm-up for some of the players who may not get the game time in the league games early doors?
I think it's a little bit of both, really, isn't it? I think you want to give a few players a chance. I mean, like I said, Allen and Giannelli, two good examples. Can they play 45 minutes to an hour, maybe?
Kuharevich might get a start if he's not playing on Saturday.
Like we talked about Cullen and Ollie Cooper there earlier. I mean, them, Brandon Cooper, Kyle Norton, of course. I mean, I think that's how you have to probably look at it, isn't it? Get those guys into the team, maybe one or two youngsters. But then there could be a few players that, we need them maybe to still play. I mean, a Grimes or a Fulton might need to start, for example. And, it could be a case of one will play an hour and then the other will come on and replace them for, the last half an hour, maybe, something like that. So, yeah, I think we've
got a few players, and we like Abdullah as well, we mentioned earlier from pre-season. So. He's someone who might well now not just drop back into the academy setup. He might be knocking on that door. So this is a good chance for him to, re-establish himself in around the sort of players that would be expecting to play in the league games. This is a chance for him to again, and as you say, other players of that ilk as well, a chance for them to keep themselves integrated.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's what's good about, if you do have a little bit of a progression in the cup competitions, really. It just gives you those options, really, to give the squad players a chance, isn't it? And, it just allows you to freshen things up. And, the fact is, if Sinu, we were to start quite well with a good win the weekend, I mean, the chances are a lot of those players will keep their place for the West Brom game the week after. So then it's important then that you have those extra couple of cup games where it just gives people an opportunity to be in the manager's thoughts, doesn't it? So and so if we were to lose to Northampton, I mean that could be losing the opportunity for some of those players. So I think it would be nice to go through, wouldn't it? And cup runs they're never a bad thing, are they? And they can generate a few quid in through the door as well. So I mean let's I would like to see us progress, but I would also like to see us give players an opportunity as well.
I think that's the difference, isn't it? If you're looking at a 46-game slog of a season with a small squad, with injuries and suspensions and whatnot, then you see this as an unwelcome distraction. But in August, when you've got a squad and you're building up that squad and you've got players who are desperate to improve, impress and try and force their way into the manager's plans, this is great.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how we have to look at it. So, you won't see me complaining about it, and let's just see what happens.
Hopefully a good crowd as well. Like you say, if we have a good start
I think Saturday, the tickets are quite cheap as well for that. So, it's always an opportunity, and plus, the kids are not in school today, so that can often hinder night games. But you might have a chance there for some to take the kids down. For some kids, it could be a first game, couldn't it? Where that type of thing. So,
I'm taking my boy down on for that one as well. So
is that his first game?
It's
for
his
example?
first game.
Well, there we go. I didn't even know that. So
it was going to be. Was it last year? Was it Southampton? What happened with that?
Oh no, it was the year before in the cup. Was
year
it?
before. Oh, that's right. That's right. They wouldn't let us play it in front of a crowd, wasn't it?
That's right.
But yes, that's right. I remember that was going to be that one, but that was a bit too young then anyway. So yeah, I'm sure I won't be alone in the taking youngsters along for that one. But hopefully there'll be a good crowd and, as you say, plenty of people looking to impress the guys in the dugout, really. Let's move away from the initial weekend and midweek game and talk about the season as a whole to end the pod, Steve. What are your realistic hopes and expectations for the team?
I'm thinking similar to last year, realistically, to be honest with you, just because I feel that the league has got so much stronger. You're asking a lot, really, for us to get into the top six. And I mean, we've discussed Perot. I mean, if he goes, it's going to be a big loss, isn't it? For example, Grimes similar. So, yeah, I think we finished 10th last year. I mean, if we finished 10th again, it would represent a good season. I think from my point of view, really. So, yeah, look, you always want to think you might have a chance of playoff, certainly to keep the season alive as long as possible. But I'm thinking more mid-table. I think realistically for us, I think it'd be a decent season, to be honest. I mean, are you thinking similar or not?
Yeah, well, more upon the point you just made there about keeping the season alive. Somehow, despite the run we went on in the middle of the season, the week before the final game, we were still in with a shout when we went to Hull.
Yeah,
so I mean that is
exactly. And in March we would say from the drop. So we didn't. It didn't really.
What
go
a terrible league that was last year.
Exactly, it's bloody awful.
But what an opportunity. But I think from this season's point of view, where we finish, I think it's more about keeping that flame, that spark alive until as late as possible, so that we've still got that fight and that hunger and something to really get behind when it gets to the slog of the season, when you come into March and April and you're really trying to see yourself over the line. Who knows? This is like total. I mean, we've got a month left of the window. We might not have Grimes, we might not have Perot. We might have 4 or 5 new faces in. If we do sell Perot in the next week, the money might get reinvested into the squad. Hopefully a lot of it will. And you'd have new faces again then, which perhaps otherwise we wouldn't have gone for because we wouldn't have the budget for. It changes it. And there's a lot of incidentals that can happen, Steve, which will change this whole outlook on where we think is going to happen. Who knows?
Exactly. This is the issue. I mean, I did the 442 always do a pre-season preview, don't they? And I was the person that answered the questions on the Swans.
Yeah.
But the questions came into me initially in mid-June. We didn't even have a manager at that point. And I had to message him and say, look, I'll answer the bulk of the questions now, but look, you're going to have to give me a delay here because I'm sailing blind on managers.
Yeah.
So obviously when Duff was appointed, I responded to
when
him.
When do they publish it?
They've just published it, I think.
I mean, that's harsh, isn't it?
But
you've got egg on your face if you're saying we're going down and then we go and poof.
Well, that's the thing. Well, I said, who's your key player? And I said Grimes because I was thinking Perot won't be here. But he is here. So it's a tricky one.
When someone pulls that out in March, April, May, when Perot's on 24 and you're going, you haven't even mentioned him, mate.
Exactly. And I remember it going the other way, the year that we actually went down from the Prem. When I answered them, we just signed Tammy Abraham. We still had Llorente and Sigurdsson. And I'm thinking, well, we could go with like the diamond formation here, Sigurdsson providing for those two. And I'm thinking, well, I wouldn't go that far, but I was thinking, look, and we'd ended the previous season really well. You're thinking, well, we're in a good position here now. We have goals in the team. You know, I think I predicted about 12th or 13th or something. And obviously then, Sigurdsson has gone, Llorente has gone on the deadline. All of a sudden, you're in a different world and, you know, it's different. So these predictions are really hard. I think the fair prediction really is when the window shuts, isn't it? I think that's when you can give a prediction that I'm far more optimistic will be accurate, if you know what I mean.
Well, the window should shut on Friday night, really. And
but unless you can get everybody else to fall into line, which they tried previously and it didn't work, there's not really a lot you can do about it, is there? So, but look, it is annoying. I think if you could get the window to shut on the 31st of July, I think that would be brilliant for everybody, to be honest with you. But it's never going to happen, is it?
No, it's not. But who knows? We'll see what happens. I mean, it's very weird. It's such a surreal scenario watching the first 3 or 4 games of the season, not knowing who in that team is still going to be there for the rest of it.
Yeah, and obviously the other issue you get sometimes is if the situation means that those players don't actually play, doesn't it? I mean, Sigurdsson did go later.
Don't want to get injured.
He wasn't in the team, was he? And I mean, we've seen it with 1 or 2 others where I think, do you remember David De Gea was going to go to Real Madrid? And then he didn't start the season for Man United. I think the last game before the window shut was down here, and we won 2-1, if you remember. I think Ayew and Gomez scored, and then it fell through, and obviously he was back in the team.
Tahir was in goals that game, I'm sure he was.
No, he wasn't. It was Sergio Romero.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, so like I said, De Gea didn't play in August, for example.
Oh,
So
I'm thinking of... I'm thinking of...
And I think it might have been the same with Harry Kane. I'm not sure if a couple of years ago he played in August. And I mean, you might get a similar situation now where Kane doesn't play in August and this month, because obviously there's speculation over whether he's going to go. So I just think it is a pain in the backside, really. But as I say, it's not going to change, is it?
No.
It is what it is. You've got to get on with it. But look, it's not ideal for anybody, I don't think.
No, it's not, but everyone has to deal with it. And we're no different. Let's hope, as I said earlier in the podcast, that we are more bullish this year and we set our stall out, because ultimately we can only be bullish if we have the financial clout to put our money where our mouth is, essentially. It's all well and good saying you're going to do X, Y and Z. Can we follow through with it? Are we going to hold out for the best offer of Perot? And if we can't get an offer which we deem sensible, and same with Grimes, and same with any of our stars. I mean, we look at Nathan Wood. He's technically at the moment only got a year left. I know we can trigger an extension on that. What's happening there? We don't know, because I would have just triggered it, to be honest.
Well, I'm assuming they have. I mean it hasn't been announced or anything, but I mean, it's literally the biggest no-brainer ever. Yeah. They've been stupid if they haven't done it.
And then you look at potentially the fact that we are being linked with several centre-backs. We do need another one anyway, because we are... light in that area for playing three.
If you're going to play three, you need another one, don't you?
Yeah, so who knows? There's plenty of the if, whats and maybes. We can only do so much in a pre-season pod because of the fact that anything could change. And as I've been checking Twitter throughout recording this, waiting to see if I'm already out of date before I've even finished speaking. So that's the nature of the beast, I'm afraid. But we will be back. We're going to be back after Northampton. Hopefully get one in before West Brom. If we're lucky, potentially might have to be after West Brom, but we'll see how we can fit one in that week. And let's just hope, Steve, that we're going to have a cracking Saturday, a cracking Tuesday, and all be buzzing. Next time we speak here, we're thinking, well, we got a bit of a team going, yeah?
Well, exactly. I want to be in the railway at 5 o'clock on Saturday thinking, well, we're in business, we're looking good, and, let's go from there, really. So, yeah, it's something to look forward to. And as I've said, if you're not going and you're listening to this and you're debating it, there is only one decision: get yourself down there, because football's football. It's not always there. We've been without it for the last 3 months, so yeah, just get yourself down there, get behind the team, and let's hope for a good day.
Absolutely. And whilst we have discussed realistic expectations, before a ball is kicked every season, every fan, no matter who you support, thinks this could be our year. And why not? We'll speak to you next week. From myself and Steve, bye-bye.